Welcome to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic, organ harvesting, the darker side of hospitals and morgues. I am your host, Spooky, here with your other most awesome host, Miss Raven.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
I'm doing pretty good. Had some weird computer stuff earlier where it crashed and had the blue screen. So we're hoping tonight we stay on the whole time, guys. So, put up the positive energy out there.
Yeah. That's right, and cross your fingers.
Yep.
Because here we go.
And your toes. But tonight's topic is, again, a viewer request. We're trying to get to all of them, like always.
Oh, yeah. We try to get to them as soon as we can, and it's just be patient. We'll get to it.
Get to yours, yeah.
We'll get to yours. We promise. We will get to yours. But we have been lately. We have been trying to get through our viewer requests because there are so many of them, and a lot of them are very good suggestions.
Yeah, some of them kind of take me down an avenue I haven't really thought about researching into. But like tonight, while I was researching for tonight's show, I do have to say it was very disturbing, the articles that I was stumbling upon and the high number of them.
Oh yeah, it's this is we probably should give you a warning that this is a very disturbing topic. Some of this stuff I already knew from personal experience, but it
can be upsetting.
Some of it is just mind-boggling. I'm sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. But Raven and I do want to state that we are not experts on this topic, and we've only had, just a few weeks to research it. Mm-hmm. But there are many people that have dedicated their lives to this topic and exposing the dark side of it.
True. There's this lady that I came across. Her name's like Nancy Hughes or whatever. She spent over 10 years dealing with just the dark side of organ harvesting and the trafficking and stuff. And she's wrote like several books. She's even helped bust several organ sellers, like here in the United States, like in New York, New Jersey, and other cities and stuff. And they actually created this group. It's called the Organ Watch Organization Project. And they've been going to different hospitals and basically confronting them on dealing with the black market and kind of leaning more towards something that's not really ethical. You know what I mean?
Personally, I think she's got to be pretty brave to do this because from what I was researching, some of these are pretty rough people. I mean, this is...
I'm talking about hospitals.
I know, but I mean, even so, there are a lot of places that don't want this known. Raven and I are going to talk a little bit about a few different things tonight dealing with the multi-billion dollars, that's billion people, not million, dollar industry of organ donations and human organ trafficking on the black market. And this is taking place all over the globe.
Oh, yeah. But we're also going to talk about body brokers, too.
Right.
With the funerals and funeral homes and morgues and stuff. But there was actually a time when I actually thought of becoming an organ donor. But for whatever reason, I guess I never followed through. And I after tonight, I'm kind of glad I didn't. Because after what we're going to talk about, it's up to you guys. We're not against this by any means, but...
If you want to be an organ donor, even after you hear this show tonight, that is strictly up to you. I mean, it's your decision. I personally am not an organ donor, and I get really funny looks when people ask me, are you an organ donor? Would you like to be an organ donor? And I tell them no. And I had a niece that received a kidney, and even though it may have extended her life a bit, it did not whatsoever improve the quality of her life.
Yeah. I mean, we're not against donating the gift of life. It just kind of prolongs people, whatever. But like we said, this was a viewer's request, and we're mainly focusing on the darker side of this industry because sadly this does occur daily. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And according to the UNOS site, which is the United Network for Organ Sharing, there are over 114,400 people in need of a transplant. Now, in the months of from January to July of 2018 alone, there have been already 21,041 transplants performed, but there have only been 10,119 donors during that time.
Well, the website's always changing daily, too.
Well, yeah, it is, but they say that every 10 minutes somebody new is added to the list. And that just like one human donor can save up to 8 lives. But the demands for these organs is far greater than the supply on hand. And it's not just here in the United States. This is a universal issue. And so it's creating a thriving underground market for organs and tissues.
Yeah, while I was reading, I was reading so many things, and it just took me into so many avenues, into some really, really dark places. But I came across this one research report that they had done in 2017, and they have a lot of things listed in there, but there's this one part where they were talking about the cost for each organ, and I couldn't believe the prices for just one single organ. I mean, your eyes were going for 30. Now I forgot. 30,000 or something like that, and then the heart was going for 1.4 million. It was insane, the prices for each individual organ. And then if you needed a double organ transplant, it was even more, tripled up. But when I was reading it, they were saying, well, of course the cost is gonna vary depending on which hospital you're in, which organ, and of course someone's insurance. But still, it's crazy the prices that I was reading. And this is supposed to be for legal. Why? This is legal. Not the black market stuff,
Right. Well, that's why it is a I want to say multi-million. It's multi-billion-dollar industry with hospitals and doctors along with drug companies. I mean, they're all making bank off of free donated organs. Human organs are extremely valuable, especially those of the young and healthy. Mm-hmm. And one single donor's body can bring in several $1 million alone. I mean, they can use someone's heart, their lungs, their kidneys, their livers, their intestines, their pancreas, their eyes.
Muscle, your bone marrow, your bones, your nerves, skin.
And tissue. Yeah, and tissue.
But, it's not to mention everybody who, receives, these transplants, they also have to continue to pay for, their long-term anti-rejection drugs, you know what I mean? And constantly keep going back and visiting, because some people may not know this, but when you are given another person's organ, what happens basically is your body instantly knows it doesn't belong to you, and it starts to fight against it to kind of get rid of it, because it knows it's not a part of your body. Everything that's in our body is designed specifically for us. So let's say you take, Bill's heart and you put it into Nancy's. Nancy's body's hold the phone. You know what I mean? This ain't happening. And that's why even if someone is given somebody else's a new organ to replace their damaged one, they're often going to die in a short period of time, from days to months to even years, because their body's constantly trying to get rid of this invader, foreign object. And that's why they created medications for these people to help manage it. And what it is, it's basically, it weakens your immune system, so it'll stop attacking this foreign object. Yeah,
I think it's called immunosuppression is what I think.
Well, it's basically suppressing and weakening your body's immune system, which isn't even
exactly
good. That's not even good within itself, just so that your body won't reject the organ. But imagine what else it's doing to your whole entire health system.
Oh, it's not good at all, because some of these anti-rejection medicines, they have 50 side effects.
What medication? What medication doesn't? You always see that stuff on TV where they're having oh, I cut my finger, and they're oh, take this pill to help, but it may make your eyeballs fall out, your arms fall off, and you grow 2 heads. Oh, great, I'll take it. I'll still make my finger stop bleeding, But the thing is, when I was reading about all the people who are receiving the organs, I was kind of curious what happens to the people who donated. The living donors. You know, like
Yeah.
what happened to them after the fact, like after they gave up a kidney or after they gave up like a part of a liver or whatever. So I was kind of looking around and digging around, and I found like a ton of cases, which I'm going to put it in references so you guys can read them, and I totally think you guys should read them tonight after the show. But there was people who are suffering long term just after donating. They get headaches, they're constantly fatigued, they have kidney diseases, nerve damage. They get like hernias. Yep. They constantly have like high blood pressure or diabetes. It's like the list was going on and on when I was reading about people after they donated. And they say that living donors are actually not tracked over time, and no one truly knows how many people die or suffer, you know, medical complications after donating a part of themselves just to save like another person. Because like they go under major operation solely just to help somebody else, but you know they face a lot of potential risk, and it just makes you wonder what the true number really is for them, you know. And I just think they're talking about, well, we're going to start posting on their websites, you know, the main websites about donating and stuff, what how far they're tracking a donor after a while, you know what I mean. But I was reading story after story after story of how they're all suffering, or they ended up, you know, getting a bad kidney right afterwards, and they're basically screwed, you know?
Exactly. I did read one article that mentioned something like 15, I think it said 15% donors dealt with medical issues, like you mentioned. Some liver donors died due to results of surgery, while some kidney donors died a month after donating. Some complained about not being able to do some physical, you know, activities that they could do before donating.
Yeah.
Some even mentioned dealing with depression and anxiety for several years after the surgery. Now, I'm not saying that all donors have issues, you know. I mean, there are many out there that would donate again, but it would be interesting to see them track, you know, the living donors, to actually see the true, you know, the results and the numbers that might occur. I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but for those who don't know, and I'm sure that everyone does, organ donation is taking a donated organ from a living donor or a deceased donor and transplanting it to the individual in need. Now, a living donor, of course, is a person, usually a family member or a friend, and even sometimes a stranger, who decides to donate one of their healthy organs, like a kidney or a portion of their other organs, while, of course, deceased donor is someone who is considered brain dead and has their organs donated.
Yeah, I can see you mentally putting your fingers up doing the quotes.
I was. That's exactly what I was doing. You know, certain words, I was putting my fingers up there.
For quote unquote. But
quote,
yeah,
quote unquote.
Yeah, but they're not really dead, because in order to even use an organ, you actually have to have blood and oxygen still flowing in order until
Exactly.
like right up until you harvest it out of the body.
Yep.
Because an organ can't be used from someone who's like really deceased, because by that, after a few minutes, when blood stopped pumping to everything, it already starting to damage, you know, and it's basically useless. And that's why the heart is usually always the last thing they'll take from a person, because once you take the heart out, because the heart's the thing that keeps the blood pumping throughout the whole body, but once you take the heart out, I mean, that's officially when the body's dead.
That's yeah, your system is basically gone. And I mean, the person is usually kept like on a ventilator until they are declared brain dead, and the organs are then harvested and put into a container with the solution. Now, they're kept, depending on the organ, they're kept anywhere from like 4 to 72 hours until it's transplanted into a compatible recipient.
Well, see, when I was, you know, because I was reading all these articles where hospitals being sued, where they were basically kind of legally murdering people. So I was kind of looking up what their term was. Where did they come up with this term? How did it come about? But brain death basically is when they say there's no longer any type of activity or function according to the UDDA, Uniform Determination of Death Act, which basically was kind of what they're saying was created in 1981. I think it's only from what I don't know 100%. I can only go off of what I was reading, and we'll have all the links so you guys can go read more. Don't just go off everything we said, because there's a whole lot more, because we're always going to kind of shorten it up a little bit because of times. span that
Oh,
we have.
absolutely.
But they say, I think it's only like in 39 states that they're kind of using this term. But basically what they're supposed to do is make sure that there's like no like cardiovascular function and that the brain has really stopped. There's no reversing it or anything. Not like where if somebody's like in a persistent like vegetation state where they're kind of unaware of their environment.
So it's said.
Well, right, because we have cases where it's proved that people were in a coma and all this other thing, and they heard everything that was going on. But the brain still has activity, including like the brainstem, and so there is the possibility or the potential for that to be a reversible state. But except each hospital, this is the messed up thing, guys. Each hospital uses a different method to actually determine if indeed the patient is brain dead. And it varies often by each state and or doctor at that facility, which then this can like basically bring forth, questionable decisions, that they're making on the patient's behalf.
Well, you can be considered brain dead in one state and alive in another.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. Well, according to the American Academy of Neurology, the patient in a coma has to have no brainstem reflex and apnea.
I was reading this article that was, what year was it? 1988. It was published in 1988, okay? And basically what they were doing is they were keeping they call them brain dead, infants alive solely for the purpose of harvesting their vital organs for a later date. And they wanted to pass a law, like make this law where you can keep a stock of people on hand who they consider brain dead and just keep them on machines until they were ready to take away their organs and put them into wherever they wanted to put them into. And I was just, man, I'm going to put a link to these articles too because I want you guys to go read all the newspaper articles, but that one was just really messed up. But they say they're supposed to always make sure that there's no movement, that the person doesn't have any motor response, and how, the person shouldn't like react to pain and like have like no spontaneous like breathing coming back or whatever. But in these cases that, we had read and we're going to share tonight, and that, that's not really kind of like what happened, because there were some comatose patients who actually recovered from what they call pre-coma brain death states, like, oh, they can never recover from that. But there's a lot of people who do. And I just was reading so many of them. There was this case in 2013. It happened in New York City. Okay. There's this woman who was termed brain dead, and she was on the table, for harvesting, I guess, and she woke up. There was another article I read in 2002 where this teen boy was declared brain dead after a car accident, but his dad was refusing consent for them to, harvest his organs because they were pushing and pushing. Like, he's dead, you should just do this, because they were pressuring him. And
they practically strong arm you.
Yeah, they do. We're reading article after article, case after case. And this guy refused. He's like, no. And 5 weeks later, this son, his teen boy, he left the hospital almost completely recovered, who they said would never recover. There was another case in 2008 where there was this young guy who had an ATV accident. And they said, well, he's brain dead by the doctors. And he said while he was in a coma, the guy who they said was brain dead, while he was in a coma, he could hear the doctors talking about wanting to harvest his organs. Moments before they did the surgery, he showed signs of life when a family member poked him with a pocket knife under his fingernail, and then all of a sudden he responded to that.
Ew.
Which, because of that, no, they did it to get him to respond. It's not like they jabbed a knife all the way up there. But because he reacted to it, that's what spared his life. Like, the surgery was canceled or whatever. But there's a guy in Sweden. There was this guy. He was paralyzed from a stroke. And he had said that he could hear the medical staff and the doctors talking about wanting to take his organs. But he had absolutely no way of letting them know that he was conscious and he could hear everything they were saying because of his paralyzed state. And he said that they sedated him, and he was so scared that he was going to die because he could not tell anybody that he was alive and could hear everything. But because of the family and everybody else was kind of pressuring it, another doctor did some tests or whatever, and he noticed that the guy's brain was swelling. And because his brain was showing swelling, they said, oh, you know, he could possibly have, this could be a sign that he could actually recover from this. So they ended up bringing the swelling down, and he woke up and began talking to his family and the medical staff weeks later. You know, there have been cases where people woke up in the morgue in body bags before they were embalmed. You know, I found this one link where that has like tons of cases that you guys can go read about tonight after the show. And I'm going to put it in the references where you can read story after story after story. There's just far too many. I mean, that alone could take up 2 hours telling everybody's experiences.
Right.
And we kind of held people's names out tonight of not kind of putting their names on the air just out of respect. But you'll be able to read all the things that we were reading. But it just makes you wonder, like, how many people they termed brain dead who really weren't, just so that they could use their organs.
Well, it's said that your hearing is the last one of your functions or your senses to go. Now, one of my sisters was in a very, very serious car accident, and she was in a coma. And when she come out of that coma, she claimed that she could hear everything that was said when people were in that room. And even she even mentioned that she remembered one nurse asking if she was an organ donor. But I was reading online in different articles that certain medical professional scholars have said that brain death term or criteria is basically founded on the sole purpose of increasing the pool for organ donations from the living, and that hospitals generate large profits from organ transplants. And many doctors are often pressured in meeting a quota by big corporations.
Yeah, it's sick, man. That was disgusting that I was reading that stuff.
Now, true or not, we can't say this for sure. We only know what we read, okay? Yeah. But I thought it was worth sharing with you guys what people are talking about online when it comes to this topic.
Yeah.
Now, but like Raven said, each state varies in their definition of brain death. In the United States, if someone comes into the hospital and is near death, like the hospital usually notifies a transplant organization of their personal details to see if they're a suitable donor. Now, if one hasn't let their wishes be known in writing, or to the family that you want everything possible done to save your life, you may just end up becoming a donor.
Right. It's almost like automatically they're kind of like, oh, what can we get for this person before they even thinking about really like saving your life. We're not saying every doctor, every nurse, and every hospital is like this, but there is a lot out there that are. They're being sued constantly, you know what I mean, for this legal murder that they're doing. But did you know that actually in certain countries, people are automatically organ donors after death? Well, there are some countries they'll actually allow you to opt out of their donor system, but you have to tell them you don't want to be an organ donor and that you want everything done to sustain your life. But like New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, and some states in the US, you have to get the consent from the family or the next of kin first, or, you know, someone close to whatever. But there's certain groups, like big time groups, which are like businesses, who are pushing to have these laws passed that basically are allowing presumed consent, which is basically automatically opt in to take your organs without having consent of your family or your friends. And they can automatically start taking it without even having to notify family before it even happens. Now, let's say if someone doesn't want to be a donor, okay? They can, in some of these countries, do, like I said, the opt-out rule. But you can, you know, you have to, I don't know, you have to, like, make sure your wishes are kind of basically known now before something happens. But you can also, I was reading, like, specifically, you can say, well, I only want certain organs taken, but not all.
Right.
Like, you don't want your eyes or, you know, you left your face and everything alone so that you can still have, like, a decent funeral for your family or whatever. But they can take your other ones. But not all these hospitals are following these rules. I read an article online here, which, like I said, we'll always be posting everything we have so you guys can see. But the organ donation system that they have, like the huge one, I guess it was flawed with a lot of errors because the people who decided that they were going to donate, if something happened to them, they were going to donate their bodies and stuff. But some people didn't want to donate everything. They only wanted to donate like maybe just a kidney or maybe just their heart and nothing else. Well, when these people were calling back to make sure like everything was up to date on their system, that's when they're like, no, I didn't agree to this. No, I didn't agree to that. And that's when they found out that somehow all of this stuff got deleted and that all these other people who were donors at the time who ended up dying ended up having things taken out of them or taken that shouldn't have been taken, and they're just like, oh, we don't know how that happened. Yeah, we know how.
Of course they don't.
Because they wanted to use everything, basically.
Well, one of my sisters died in 2011, okay? And I don't know about other states, but I can tell you about this one. When you go and get a driver's license, a lot of people don't know this. When you go and get a driver's license, they ask you if you are an organ donor. And if you say yes, that is considered a legal document. When my sister passed away, they checked the DMV, her license number, to see if she was a donor. Well, she was. They were trying to kind of rush us out of the room because they had to, take organs. Well, as it turned out, because she died of cancer and she had chemo treatments, the only thing they could take were her eyes. And they took the corneas. But a lot of people don't realize this when she's talking about this consent thing, that if you put that on your driver's license and you later change your mind, you better go back to the driver's license station in this state anyway, which is Illinois, that you better go back and change that because that driver's license is considered a legal document. And if you are an organ donor, there's not much your family can do unless they immediately go get a court order to stop it.
Yeah, I was thinking about almost having like a tattoo put on me, like not an organ donor. So that
I am not an organ donor, and I got when I got my driver's license renewed. Matter of fact, just this year, and this guy's going through everything the same. Yeah, and he's typing, name, address, and all this. He says organ donor. Yes, and I said, oh, no, I am not an organ donor. He didn't want to change it, but I stood there and made him.
But even if it's kind of like, do you know that there's like a reward system, like who gets the most, you know what I mean? Like they get, they're kind of like, it's disgusting the things I was reading, but the thing is, I was reading different articles where they were talking about how, they would give a patient who they deemed brain dead, like a paralyzing med, like no anesthetic or whatever. But what it will do is it paralyzes the entire body. And the reason why they were doing this is because when they're cutting up the body, because the person's still alive until they take out the heart, right? So when they were cutting up the body, they paralyzed it because they didn't want them jumping around or moving around or coming back to, waking up. But it's mentioned that during this process that they can actually feel the pain as each organ is being taken out. And they can't move because of that injection. And once, like I said, the heart's taken out, that's when death truly occurs. And because I was reading so many things, and there was a lot of nurses, some doctors, and gosh, I can't talk tonight.
Anesthesiologists.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Sorry, I had worked a long day. But they all declined in aiding and working when it comes to taking organs because they knew that person was going through what they were going through. You know what I mean?
Well, can you really blame them, though? I mean, they have to live with that, and
it's like basically legal murder.
Yeah, and technically, they'd be a party to murder. And while it may not always be proven in court, it is something that they would have to live with for the rest of their lives. And that has to be that is agonizing. You're laying there, you're still alive, you can't move, and you feel this going on in your body. And there's nothing you can do about it. You know that you're going to die.
Yeah, because when I was reading the story after story after story of all these people who was listening to the medical people talking about wanting to take their organs and they couldn't do anything about it, and for whatever reason, something occurred, a family member kept pushing to make sure they weren't taken off. A lot of them had to go to court because the hospital would fight them and not allow them. And they would have to go to court, and sometimes the judge still sides with the hospital. You know, there's so many people who recovered, and they said, oh, they will never recover. And they did. You know, there is, in 2013, the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, there was an anesthesiologist, sorry, having a hard time getting words out. They were actually being accused of purposely giving a fatal dose of opiates in order to speed up or help the death of a little 8-year-old boy. Now, this boy, he arrived to the hospital because he had an accident that occurred in the home where he almost nearly drowned. But during that situation, he kind of like went into cardiac arrest, but the EMTs got his heart beating again, but he went into a coma, obviously, because of lack of oxygen for a while.
Right.
But while he was at the hospital, you know, he was on a ventilator, and the parents were told that, you know what, although he's not brain dead, we feel that he will never recover to have any normal brain functions. So he's not brain dead, but they just think from their what they want to say, that they just think, well, he won't have 100.
It's just their opinion.
Right, he won't have 100. He probably won't have 100% function, and he possibly may never awake. But at which time they were basically advising them that, hey, you should take him off life support, and we should, you know, donate his organs, basically. But when this little boy was taken off the ventilator, he kept breathing and gasping on his own, which they said he never would if, you know, without the machine. And according to these articles I was reading, it wasn't until 23 minutes later that that boy passed. But when this coroner was claiming that the boy died because of the opiates toxicity, the fentanyl, or however you say it, it's fentanyl / opiates type of toxicity in his body because of the anesthesiologist who pumped him full of it to basically speed up to kill him. But since he wasn't brain dead, the supposed procedure that was going to be under, how they're going to claim this was, it was a DCD or a cardiac death, so that he could become a deceased donor. But they say it's normal to give somebody like some kind of pain relief to help the patient, but not the amount in which it causes their death. Now, this boy was 47 pounds, and they gave him over 500 micrograms. You know, they basically killed him. They killed him, pressured the parents, and then they harvest his liver and his kidneys, you know, and his death was being investigated as an intentional murder.
Well, that's exactly what it was. But we will have in our references, you know, the links for you guys, for our listeners, so they can go and read more on these cases.
Yeah, because there's so much more to this. But
I know, we just don't have the time to really go through them.
Well, you could do show after show after show on all this. But in 2007, in Hammett Medical Center in Erie, Pennsylvania, there was this 18-year-old man, okay? He was brought to the hospital after an accident on a skiing trip. I think he went on like a skiing trip with his school or whatever. But they said that he had sustained a closed head injury. Now, he was airlifted to the hospital, and he was there for 5 days. Now, this hospital told the family that this young man was brain dead and that he would never recover and that they should donate his organs. You know, they're constantly pushing for that. But it turns out the guy wasn't brain dead at the time his parents signed the papers, and that he actually didn't meet any of the criteria that says he was brain dead. So basically, they were wanting him to be a donor before he was even dead, and they wanted his parents to sign the do not resuscitate order. Now, I think mainly because they're doing this is because these are young, healthy, active people, and their organs are far more desirable, because people who usually are donators, they don't plan on, donating while they're in their prime. It's usually
Nope.
It's usually when you die, you have a disease, you have cancer, a heart attack, something serious happened to you. So you know what, your organs aren't that great. They can't really use them. So of course, when they get all these younger people coming in, that's why they keep using this brain death, because that gives them a reason to up the pool, But,
well, it also, when they use the term brain dead,
mm-hmm.
it gives the parents or the next of kin this sense that they will never change. They will never recover. They will basically be in a vegetative state.
Which we know is not true for many, many cases.
Right, exactly. But it just sounds like that there is absolutely no hope of recovery.
That's what they're alluding to, right?
Right.
But these parents actually wanted them to do everything in their power to help their son. Even if his life would be a disabled one, they didn't care. They wanted their son to be alive. And even if he didn't have 100% the way he used to be, they didn't care. They were still going to love him anyway and take care of him, be there with him.
Right.
But, like I said, they pressured and pushed for this, and said he was dead, but he wasn't. And
once you sign that do not resuscitate order, it's hard to rescind it.
Basically, kind of how it is, and I'm not against people who go into the profession to want to help people, because
absolutely.
There in anything in life, there are good and there are bad. Okay,
right.
That's exactly in every aspect of any industry that you're going into, and that's what organ transplant is. It is an industry. It's all about money. Right. You don't want to end up having to have a transplant. Basically, we have to take care of ourselves better. We have to, eat better. We shouldn't be overindulging in this or that or whatever, because we're doing harm to ourselves. But also, there's just a lot to go on to this. But in 2006, I read a case. Yeah,
there was, I know about that one. In 2006, there was a case where a man in California.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Had cardiac and respiratory arrest. Mm-hmm. Now, he was revived, and he was brought to the Sierra Vista Regional Medical Center. And there he was hospitalized for several days on a ventilator. Now, the mom was with him at the hospital for a while, but she couldn't afford to stay any longer, so she went home. But she said that she got a call from them the next day saying that his brain had some damage due to lack of oxygen, and that he wouldn't recover. Now, from what the article was saying, the staff decided that they wanted to take him off the ventilator, so they called his family. Now, she said that she was contacted by the Donor Network of California and was asked for his organs. And since she didn't want to see her son suffer from what she was being told, she agreed. Now, so they took him off the ventilator, and because the man didn't die right away, after being removed from the ventilator, the doctor decided to give this man several different doses of drugs, and one of them was betadine. Now, betadine is an antiseptic. It's not a pain medication or any. This is strictly an anesthetic, and it actually causes death if it's ingested. Well, the man died. I think they said it was 7 to 8 hours later, and because he didn't die sooner, they couldn't harvest his organs because they had already started to deteriorate and they were unusable. And the doctor told the staff to administer the drugs, and I'm getting tongue-tied. The doctor that told the staff to administer the drugs was charged with several felonies. Mm-hmm. And I believe the family won a civil suit against this doctor and the Donor Network along with a few others that participated in this lawsuit. But
It was.
I mean, this man died for absolutely nothing but greed.
That's the main thing, and that makes that pushes people to do things unethically. Is greed. Greed. I swear to God, greed is like the biggest harmful thing that really destroys our planet. And causes division, because I'm not saying everybody in this field are bad, because they're not. There's amazing people and there's bad people. So I don't want everybody to think like we're trashing hospitals, because
Exactly.
they do good stuff too, but
Yes, they do.
it also is it's all about business. I mean, they're in the business to keep you sick, because if they cured everybody, then they wouldn't have any business. It's run by big time companies. It's not run by good-hearted soul individuals who become a medical person who wants to save people. It's run by corporations that all they care about is money, and all they see you as a commodity.
Exactly, and you're treated as a commodity, and it's terrible. Like I said, this man died for no other reason except greed, and in the end, his organs were unusable.
I know. Basically, they sped up this man's, death. And who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows? He may have recovered. There have just been so many cases that we read where people have. His body was obviously still working even after he was taken off the machines. And somebody had mentioned in chat, maybe this could be a reason why there's people missing in the world. And it is one of the reasons why some people are taken. It's like human trafficking, which we'll talk about in the second hour, because we have a whole bunch of other stuff we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But they do. They are taking people, kidnapping people, especially younger people, healthier people, because they're worth it. But they don't even care if you're healthy, because they'll even sell diseased organs, which we're going to be talking about. But let's take a quick break, because I need to get a drink of water, because I forgot to bring a cup in here. And we'll go back. It'll be like 3 minutes, not even. And we'll come back, and we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, like tons of more stuff that's dealing with other countries. And one of our viewers were talking about missing person cases and stuff too. So we'll be right back in 3 minutes. I just have to get a drink of water. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. I'm your host, Raven. Tonight's topic is organ harvesting, the darker side of hospitals, morgues, and, funeral homes. And Spooky's back with us.
Yep.
Now, tonight was a viewer's request, and, we don't just do paranormal stuff, we don't just do cryptid stuff, we do, stuff that's going on in our daily world, too. We kind of do a little bit of variety of everything. So,
right. We try.
Yeah, so, feel free to send whatever, because, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff people want us to work on. Someone wants us to do Flat Earth, which, I don't know, that'll be an interesting one to talk about, because I don't believe the Earth is flat, but to each their own opinion.
I don't either, but a lot of people do, and there is a cult out there that actually believes that the Earth is flat.
Right, and to each their own, you know what I mean?
Right.
We all like to do our own little research and stuff. And tonight, me and Spooky always say, we're not experts on this topic. We only had,
absolutely not.
2 weeks to research it, but we tried our best to kind of hit a little bit of we're going to try to hit a little bit of everything. But we're definitely going to put a lot of links and references, because I hope you guys who do listen to this go and click and read more, because there's so much more than what we can actually say, especially in these articles.
It will actually shock you.
It's disturbing. And hospital after hospital after hospital.
It is disturbing, and it will really open your eyes.
Yeah, it'll make you, it'll make sure that you don't want to ever go into a hospital. It's kind of scared me a little bit. But, what were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about hospital cases still. Like, you were just talking about the one in California or whatever.
Right.
But there's all these hospitals that are, being sued. But a lot of them sometimes are winning in court. And then the person ends up getting taken off the ventilator and stuff. But there was an article in 2012. Excuse me. I read this article where it was at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. And they were taking organs of a 51-year-old without the consent of the family. The 51-year-old had a lung condition, and they died from it, from what I was reading. But his mother, after talking with the doctors, decided to have an autopsy done to find out how he truly died. And during that autopsy, I guess they decided they were going to take several of his organs for educational purposes.
I saw them fingers go up, educational purposes.
We don't have cameras. In her mind, she's... No. Without permission, and then they sent the body back to the undertakers. But it was the undertakers who informed the mother of the body's condition. She would have never known if they didn't tell her, if he just put the suit on and whatever. But, actually, she would know in this case, because they actually took his eyes, so they can have an open casket, or, not the way she intended it, his heart, his brain, his pancreas. They claimed in the fine print of the autopsy, they're allowed to take samples for research. Now, they don't have to make the signer, or I don't know, they're supposed to. I think they're supposed to make the signer. Yes, they're supposed to make the signer aware of it, but that didn't happen in this case, and I'm sure it does happen in other, because if they were made aware of it, a lot of people would say no. But this didn't happen in this case. And she said she never even agreed to such actions. And her lawyer stated that the form that she signed, it didn't explicitly. Sorry guys, I'm having a hard time talking after working a long day.
Explicitly.
Now you can't talk either. It states that it doesn't state, that they would be harvesting organs. Really, it doesn't really say it, verbatim, in there, so you'd know that's what they plan on doing, So I was just like, how many times that happened? You know what I mean? And good thing the Undertakers, I'm glad the Undertakers called and told her, but I think she would kind of figure it out when his eyes and everything else was gone. So it kind of, messed up the funeral for the families grieving and saying goodbye,
Exactly. Well, in January of 2013, now I'm going to mention this person's name because it made national news.
Yeah.
But in January of 2013, a Georgia teen named Kendrick Johnson. This was the young man that was found deceased in a rolled up gym mat at his school. And the mat was set up, and the child was and it upside down. Now, the local authorities determined that this was a freak accident and that death was caused by suffocation. Well, Kendrick's parents just could not accept the official determination of death. I'm guessing something just kept nagging at them. They had already held the funeral and everything, but 6 months later, they obtained a court order and had their son's body exhumed. And they had the autopsy performed by this independent pathologist.
Somebody who doesn't work for the place who was doing this. Yeah, so that you could probably have a better chance at getting the truth.
Exactly. And this pathologist determined that Kendrick died from a blunt force trauma to the right side of his neck. But that was not all they found. Kendrick's body was literally stuffed with newspaper, and his brain, his heart, his lungs, and his liver were all missing.
Was he a teen?
He was a teenager. He went to this school in Georgia. And like I said, they found him rolled up in a gym mat at school. But right now, the FBI is involved in this case. So there's not really much beyond that. You know, there's not really much beyond that to really be found, except for maybe what his parents are saying.
Yeah, because they can't say too much if it's being investigated. But obviously, when they say it was blunt force trauma, it's like somebody did something and tried to cover it up by rolling him up in a mat.
Right, because, I mean, you know, in a gym mat, you're not going to die of blunt force trauma.
Ghost Call Radio, a chatter in here, a network, they were talking or mentioning that there was a lot of coroners that were charged with theft in England because they were taking cadaver parts and profiting off big time.
It happens all over the world.
Oh, I know. Well, you were talking about some family members that you were talking about earlier. My cousin's wife, she was having some type of health issues with her, and after a few doctor visits and they're doing scans or whatever, they told her, I think it was like her gallbladder. They're saying, oh, this is what's going wrong or whatever. I think it was a gallbladder anyway. We'll just say it was, okay? But anyways, they said, well, she needs surgery. So she goes in and has the surgery, okay? When she woke up, they told her that there was nothing wrong with it and that it was healthy, but they took it out anyways. She said, why did you take it out? And they said to her, well, we were in there anyways. And so basically they took a healthy organ from a living person, which she was livid, which who wouldn't be, right? Because when you take something out of the body, you're basically weakening the body system, you know. And
the gallbladder, for those of you who don't know it, the gallbladder is what breaks down the fat that you take in. So once that is gone, removed, you have to watch your fat intake.
Right, and they say a lot of people, it can shorten your life because of it being taken out. Really, it all comes down to us how well we're taking care of ourselves, really. So we aren't put into these situations, but there are some people who are born into this. And like we said, me and Speaker are not against the gift of donating, and we're not against those who are trying to help save other people's lives, but we're against those who are taking someone else's life for the profit of just moving organ to body. They're not really doing it and wanting to save someone's life. They're all about making the profit that they get from it. That's what we're against. We're not against the blessing that this does bring for people. But like I said, the guy was like, well, we were in there anyway, so let's take it out. And they're like, well, are you going to give us back our $10,000 that it's costing us because you did this? But the guy was, I couldn't believe it, and what they were telling me and stuff. And the fact that now, like I said, you know, her body is basically kind of weakened with her, but it makes you wonder how many times a day they do this to other people. You know, you go in, you see that the organ is okay, and they decided to take it out anyways. I mean, what the hell? Sorry, but this is close family stuff. I mean, that really upsets me because it's just messed up. You know, what did they end up doing with that? Did they profit from taking it, or did he just, decide to take it out because he wanted to dissect it and check it out? I don't know, but it's one of those things that upset you.
I had something like that kind of happen to me. I had a ruptured cyst on my ovary, and when they went in to remove it, they took out my appendix while they were in there.
Without your permission?
Yeah. We took your appendix too, we could see it, and you don't need an appendix anyway.
That's not true. You need every single organ. If you didn't need an organ, it wouldn't be in your body. Like, everything is in our body for... And
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, let me finish. You keep saying you agree before you can read my thoughts, but chatters can't because we've known each other for so long. But you literally need everything in your body. There's a purpose why it's there. Everything does something to help everything function correctly. Now, the term they should say is that you can possibly live without a certain organ, but there's no useless organ in your body. Everything has its purpose, and they were trying to push that, oh, well, that's useless anyway. No, it's not. But there have been cases of patients who actually received incompatible transplants. Oh, yeah. There was tons of those. Oh, man, I was like, what the frick? In 2003, a young female, she had blood type O, okay? And she needed a heart and a lung or whatever. So she got the heart and 2 lungs from a blood type A. Her body began to immediately reject the organs and started to attack them. And it was said that she went into like a small coma. Now, they found another set of organs for her, but it wasn't until 2 weeks later, and she was basically on the brink of death because of their mistake. Now, she ended up suffering brain damage and showed she was brain dead, and she died due to incorrect blood type organs being placed into her body. And it all happened because no one checked to make sure it was the correct blood type. And there's a lot of people that are involved throughout this system. It's not just like 1 or 2 people and that's it. Through the whole process of when you're going into surgery and all the different nurses, doctors, everything, you're looking at charts, and nobody saw that she's type O and this is type A. And even the organ donation who looked through the list, they knew what her blood was, and they sent her the totally wrong one. But the hospital ended up being cited by the federal government for multiple issues. And so later on, of course, the hospital says, well, they took action to correct these issues that they had, and it won't happen again. But if they did or didn't, it's hard to say if they actually did take the measures to make sure this doesn't happen again. But how many times has it happened? How many times did it happen before this one made the news? But it's not just people that are, receiving the wrong blood type. You got people who are getting diseased organs. People are getting organs that have HIV or hepatitis C or B viruses. You got cancers,
I had a niece that received a kidney transplant. Now, she received the kidney transplant from her mother, okay? They were supposedly a perfect match. Mm-hmm. They go on a point system. Mm-hmm. It's 10 points, and it includes blood type, and things like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of things. And you have to match 4 out of 10 points. Well, my sister and her daughter matched 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Blood typing should be the first thing they do. Mm-hmm. Because your body cannot take... You can't be... like my niece was an rare blood type. I think it was something like AB negative, something like that. As was my sister. It was a rare blood type. You cannot put even a universal blood type, which I believe is O positive, into someone with a rare blood type like that. You can't do it. That should have been the first thing they checked. This woman died because of their negligence, or
a girl.
I can't say it's ignorance, because they should have known better.
Yeah, but it was a young kid. It was a young girl.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I think this case, what it was, she was from another country, and they came over here, illegally, but it happens. Okay, it happens. But that's not what my point of the story is. But the people in the community found out that she needed this. And they loved the family and they loved the little girl. So all these people came together and got the money raised up in order for her to have this to happen. And then for this to happen too. It's awful. But this, this isn't the first time this has happened. That happens a lot.
Sure it does. I read in a few articles that because of organ shortages, there's been cases where organs were taken from elderly or even ill patients, and this led to those getting cancer, dying shortly after, and so on. And there was an article talking about someone who received an organ transplant from a donor who died from cyanide poisoning.
Yeah, how does that pass?
Cyanide goes through your organ
system, through your whole system.
Entire system. Yeah, you can't use a patient or an organ from someone who dies of poisoning. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't use organs from inmates who are put to death.
They use. Well, we're going to be talking about, but they do.
We're going to be talking about that, but I'm talking about in this country.
No, but they do. They have. Remember we were talking about, what the heck shows was it? That had to deal with, the cat's knocking on the door again, deals with how they were actually taking prisoners to the other room and cutting them open, taking their kidneys and selling one of them. They were, remember, what was that? It was in New Mexico. I think we were talking about that one prison where people were complaining who ended up, surviving, getting out of that prison and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember what it was.
But trust me, it happens here, not just in other countries. It's happening here too, and you're reading about it. But of course, the media is also controlled, so you're not always going to get to see the things that we should be seeing. There's a lot of things that should be talked about, not the things that
are not.
Yeah, not the things that they are pushing down our throat, But there's things that should be brought to light so that we can all band together to make sure things like this aren't happening. But if you a donor usually isn't going to donate their organs unless, they're kind of like on their deathbed because of a major illness anyway. So that's, and I think that's why they're always so quick to term someone brain dead. Because when somebody who's coming in who's younger or a healthier or a more active type of person because of an accident, all they see is dollar signs. Not everybody, but a lot of them. Because these are this is a corporation, it's industry, it's a business, and their organs, our body, not just our organs, our skin, everything, it's far more profitable for them, to let us die, than sparing our lives.
Not only that, they probably figure that the younger the donor, the longer the organ will last.
No, the more profitable it is, the healthier it is.
And the more profitable it is, absolutely.
Yeah. It's all about money.
And on average, a person can wait anywhere from 3 to 5 years for an organ transplant. And during that time, 18 people a day on the transplant waiting list die before they receive their transplant or before a suitable donor can be found. Mm-hmm. And if someone has the financial status, they oftentimes will turn to hiring an organ broker. Now, an organ broker is one who will find, the organ they need. And
anywhere in the world.
Anywhere, in another country, a foreign donor in the hospital that will perform the procedure for them. The term, often used is called transplant tourism or medical tourism.
Yeah, what's been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Oftentimes the wealthy, not all of them, but a lot of the wealthy have gone through their second, their third, and even their fourth transplants with organs provided by the black market.
Or hospitals that will take the money over somebody who doesn't have the financial.
Or they'll pay money to move up the list. Now, I'm not saying this is a situation, but I noticed Steve Jobs received his transplant fairly quickly.
Yeah, he just said I'm more sicker than everybody else was on the list. No, he had money and gave, it's like sliding under the table. Well, here, we'll donate a whole new wing or something. You know what I mean?
And according to the World Health Organization group, because of the shortage and high demand for human organs, many living in impoverished countries are being kidnapped daily. especially young kids and teenagers. Like in 2012, there was this young African girl that was taken to the UK for the sole purpose of harvesting her organs. But fortunately for her, she was rescued.
Well,
people are being taken and are either killed for their organs, or they're forcibly used and paid a small fee as compensation and then dumped off afterwards.
well, yeah.
In India, for example, India is a hotbed for donated kidneys. They go to smaller villages and they'll offer many of the people a couple $1,000s for a kidney. And many accept this offer because they use the money to purchase farm animals or land or to pay off their debts. You know, I mean...
To pay off their what? Death?
Debts. D-E-B-T-S. Debts. Because poverty is so extreme. You know, I mean, and many do accept the offer. I mean, oftentimes these surgeries are done under unsanitary conditions,
Yep.
without the proper medical supplies or even trained surgeons. And the men selling their organs, they take it to the black market and they sell it for far higher profits. I mean, kidneys are the top thing that is sold on the global black market even today. And there's a high demand for them.
Mm-hmm.
Even in cities like New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, I mean, black market transplants are going for $150,000 and up.
You know, I was actually reading tons of stuff where U.S. medical facilities actually are being caught time and time again illegally trafficking organs.
Oh, yeah. Hospitals across the United States, there are surgeons who are what they call broker friendly, and they'll perform transplants that they either do not know or they do not care where that organ came from.
Well, yeah, because they're making bigger bucks by doing this stuff.
Yeah, they get money too, and there are unscrupulous brokers and surgeons and morgues and even funeral homes, you know, that are making millions in the black market organ and body trade.
Well, trafficking human organs is like one of the top profitable operations next to, you know, drugs, you know, in almost every country.
And that is true. And kidneys make up for 80% of the black market trade. And I don't know, like in the U.S. alone, okay, people on dialysis, like dialysis brings in approximately $32 billion a year. Transplants bring in about $5.4 billion a year, and the anti-rejection drugs bring in over $320 billion a year. And this is just in the United States alone. In countries like India, the people who do get the transplants, if they're able to afford one, they can't afford the anti-rejection drugs.
Somebody said, you know, it's kind of like the story of the urban legend. Bill Perry said about how, you know, we all heard about the movies and the stories, the urban legend of like, you go overseas for a vacation. Next thing you know, you wake up in a hotel room in a tub full of ice and you're missing an organ. And then there's a note that says, seek emergency medical assistance right away.
And you know
but
what?
That's true. It really is happening.
That scenario is not so far-fetched.
No, it's true. It happens a lot, apparently, from what we're reading. But it's not just, okay, the organ, a multi-billion dollars of organ transplant industry company, what they're making millions. But like you brought up, the dialysis. They'll tell you, like, oh, your kidney's bad or whatever. And sometimes they tell you, they even do this in cancer. Okay, this is disgusting. But they'll tell people, like, oh, you have cancer, and the person didn't really have cancer, just so they can keep putting them through chemotherapy and this and that and everything else, because that is what makes the money. They're not in this business to make you healthy. They're not in this business to heal you. Some people who go in hoping, like, I'm going to just go to school, I'm going to save lives, I'm going to be a hero. When they enter into these facilities, these big businesses, these corporations, they realize it's not what it is. It's all about keeping you sick, and everybody's a commodity. And it's even now where they say, if you go into the hospital, they can tell you, well, we're not letting you out. We're not taking you off this stuff. We're going to keep you here. They can actually keep people now. Like, they kept my mom in a hospital overseas, in another state because she had gotten sick off they flew to Florida, I think it was. And she ended up getting ill, really ill, because of whatever somebody had on the plane. She was in that hospital, was it like weeks? Wasn't it?
It was
a long time. And
I remember it.
They were forcing her to go through all this stuff. She was trying to say no. They weren't even letting her leave. She wanted to leave. And they're like, you're not leaving. They were like, we medically term that you have to stay here because we say so. You know, but there's people who have kids go in and they'll take your kids away and say, we own your kid now because you're not making right decisions for them and stuff. There's things like that are occurring. But, you know, people who get into dialysis, they're going to keep pushing you to have as many as you can because that's a lot of money.
I have a friend, and you know who he is. I've talked about him quite a bit.
Yep.
He is on dialysis. He is on dialysis, and his kidneys still work. They don't work completely, but they still work. And dialysis, your lifespan on dialysis is only 3 to 5 years, or around 3 years. There is no way that you should be on dialysis if your kidneys are still working, in my opinion. But dialysis only does 10% of what a normal healthy kidney would do. Mm-hmm. That's why you are on dialysis for 3 to 5 hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week.
It's all big money.
It's all big money. And every time he has dialysis, that's $1,500 that place gets. And it's not just in hospitals anymore. He goes to a company.
Yeah, it's a medical company that's doing these things.
It's a big medical company that sets up these dialysis clinics, you know, all over. And there happens to be one in this town.
Oh, and they're not all sanitary. The people aren't cleaning the machines like they're supposed to and then plug it into somebody else.
Oh, that's another thing, too. The health department went in there after somebody complained. They'll wipe down. That they do change the tubing, but they're supposed to also wipe down that machine, and all they were doing was changing the tubing. So people were getting sick in there. They were getting all kinds of things viruses, in there, you know, colds, flus, all kinds of viruses and stuff.
HIV and stuff, anything else.
It's like they have you on a assembly line. You know how cars are on an assembly line and one section puts this on the car and one section puts that on the car. That's the way it is with dialysis. They get one patient in, get them hooked up. You know, they go their time on the dialysis machine, get them out of there and get the next patient in.
Yeah, and they don't even tell you when it comes to cancer patients that the chemotherapy and the radiation actually creates and helps the cancer cells thrive and reproduce further into different parts of your body. It doesn't kill it. It doesn't stop it. And it actually spreads it and feeds it.
And what some people don't realize
is this. That's how you keep money going, dude.
Yeah. The dialysis machine actually takes the blood out of your body and filters it and then circulates it back into your body. That leads to all kinds of things that you can catch.
Right.
Especially if they're not cleaning those machines.
But you're talking about black market stuff again. Let's go back. So there's so many things we could talk about that it's just corrupt and nasty because these are corporations, they're companies. All they care about is money, really. But imagine, like you're talking about, living somewhere where you had no choice, and because of your religious beliefs, or because of the way that you lived, or your age, or because of your heritage, or your financial status, that you were actually forced as a living donor.
Yeah, and political prisoners are being harvested and used as living donors, like in China's organ transplant network. People who practice, let's see if I can get this right, Falun Gong are being held prisoners in a concentration-like camp. And when a matching recipient is found, they're killed for their organs, and which are sold and transplanted for huge profits. And this happens daily in China.
Right. And I was reading like some of that stuff too in a second, but I remember something I was reading like in China, they something like they want to keep the whole body intact. It's like some type of belief system they have when they bury it, right? So
Yeah.
that when they're taking these people who don't follow their rules or their system because of the religious belief, anyway, but what did you say, the Fulong Gong, right? Basically that's like and we apologize for saying it wrong. It's like the spiritual practice of kind of like the Dharma wheel, kind of like similar to Buddhist, where you're like kind of like living like a holistic life, with more of like a balanced moral teaching, and you're like a spiritual meditation practices and stuff like that. And it's all kind of like about improving one's health and your energy level and just being balanced and one with everything type of stuff.
Yeah.
But like in 1999, the China's Communist Party, they wanted to put an end to this movement. They wanted it banned because it's going against what they're pushing, right? So they created a group called the 610 Office, who basically persecuted the Falun Gong. Now, these people were actually, they're being illegally imprisoned, tortured, mentally, physically, and like Spooky said, forced to be organ donors. And then they'll have their bodies cremated. But wait, it's not just like, oh, well, kill them and then take their organs. They're actually being harvested while the person's alive.
Right.
Ugh,
Yeah, and only after they've been harvested for a profit first.
Yep.
Because like China was selling human organs at a lower price than the United States. And this is actually what lured in medical tourisms. And one of the surgeons who extracted organs from the prisoners in China mentioned that they were executed solely for the purpose to sell their organs and skin. And at times, like you said, some of the prisoners were still alive when they were being harvested.
Yeah, I think that there's like, the skin, they're like, skinning these people alive because the skin goes for like a high price too. But I'm sure the reason why they're using them for, organ harvesting and stuff is because they are eating healthy and their organs and their skin are like superb over many others who, live a less healthy lifestyle. And when I was reading about this stuff too, I stumbled on a bunch of documentaries as well as books that are talking about the ongoings in China. And one of them's called The Human Harvest, and another one's called Hard to Believe. We're going to have a link where you guys can go watch these movies and stuff. I really think you should check this out. But this is going on all up to today. It's not like, oh, it happened so long ago, it's no big deal. I mean, it's happening. And the UN and everybody's like, they're speaking out against this, and people in China are speaking out against this, saying this is wrong. And
but yet they're doing it.
But here's the thing: if some of us, for whatever reasons, governmental things change in our country, and we don't end up getting to have the same freedoms that we have, we can end up having this happen to us here, openly and legally.
Exactly. But it's not just China, though. There are several other countries where people are being taken away from their loved ones. I saw an article online just recently, like, I think it was in 2017. It was very, very recent, where 24 people were being held prisoners in a building solely to be used for organ harvesting, and this was in Pakistan. But these 24 were lucky. They were saved by a police raid.
Yeah, I was reading chat. Somebody was talking about how they were talking about trying to clone people and just use the clone people specifically for living donors.
Yeah.
And that is unethical too, because even if the person's cloned or whatever, it's still a person. There's still something within them, And where does the line cross ethically and all this other stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Where's it drawn? Where is it drawn? To between ethical and what? Non-ethical?
But
I'm sorry, I was reading what Bill Ward said. Bill Ward said they can take anything they want. If you are a donor on your driver's license, check your license, which is true. I hit on that earlier, Bill.
which they're kind of doing already. Well, he's just agreeing, like they
Right.
pay attention.
And Doppel said you don't need to clone people, just the organs. Which
That'd be
actually
interesting to do.
that would be an interesting thing to do, exactly.
In
At least it would save lives.
Yeah, but it wouldn't make as much profit, maybe, because
That's it. See, that's
every
it,
process.
Doppel. That's not as profitable because it takes a while to clone something.
No, but that's not it. Everything that happens within a hospital is pricey. From using a bed, from using the items that they use, to the whole process from A to Z till you're in the door and out the door. They're making tons of money on multiple things. No, it's not just taking the body out, but it's what you're using and everything else.
When you're in a hospital and a doctor comes up, don't even have to walk in the door, just stick his head there, and say, "Hi, how are you doing today?" "I'm fine." "Okay." And he leaves. He can charge your insurance company for visiting you in the hospital. All he has to do is ask how you're doing.
Yeah, I know. You ever notice, like, you get there, and if you don't get there on time, you get, they're like, oh, you get, they're like, oh, you cancel your appointment, you get this, or you get charged anyway. But you see, you get there on time, but then they make you sit in the waiting room for an hour and a half, which it's not their fault, because a lot of times, I know this happens, a lot of people come in and then they slow the process down and push everybody back. So it's not literally their fault, but sometimes it is their fault. But somebody was saying, like, is it unethical to sell one of your own kidneys? And that's something we're going to talk about here a little bit, where our people are talking about, like, maybe we should allow this. Why can't people do this? Whatever. We'll talk that here in a little bit. But in Mexico, I was reading about the gangs there that were kidnapping children and teens and killing them just to harvest and sell their organs. And then they would transport it via refrigerated trucks, or, they would wrap them up in the blankets and then put them in these freezer boxes or whatever. Yeah. But it's not just that. They might not kill them there. They'll take them from Mexico, bring them into the United States to a warehouse that they have, and they'll use them as living blood donors, or, use them alive until they harvest piece by piece by piece. You know what I mean? But I read an article that occurred in 2008 where a doctor in Gurgana, whatever, I don't know, some other country, okay, he was luring homeless people and poor people with the false hope of work and money. So, of course, they're like, heck, yeah. But it comes to find out that he started harvesting their organs without their permission. And then what he would do is, like, pay them a very small amount of money and then sell them off. And he, basically was profiting, selling for way, way higher, for this as a medical tourism package to the wealthy overseas individuals who are in need of these organs. And there's people who are like, I don't care. The list is so long here. I'm going to die before I get it, so I don't care. I'm going to go to overseas. I don't care where it comes from. It's all about me and prolonging my life, even though it may only be prolonged for a month, a couple days, or a year. They don't care where it comes from, these people.
No, they don't. They don't care. And there are so many traffickers, Japan, South Africa, the Philippines, Brazil, Egypt. I mean, the list is endless. And there is story after story of people killed in the name of profit.
In India, they discovered children behind a school, and they were dead, of course, but they had their kidneys and their eyes were removed.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about all the missing cases of people here in the United States.
Yeah, it does. Big time. After reading all this stuff. But there are so many cases of children, like I said, being smuggled into the States. Some for sex trafficking. Others solely to just be used, like I said, for organ, their blood, their bones, or whatever. But there was this article I read where a man in New York sold his kidneys from, was it sold it or bought it? I don't know. I've been talking. Anyway, he got this guy in New York. was getting. Oh, he sold kidneys. That's right. He sold kidneys to whoever. But where he would get his kidneys from, he was like a body broker. That's what you call them. I was trying to think of the name. That's why I was like, what is it? What do you call these? There was a body broker in New York City. And what he ended up doing was like he would contact other people like in Israel and arrange a donor. And then he would fly them out here to the like United States. He would pay for their stay, make sure they were okay. Then he would get their blood tested, find out what they were so that he could match them up to somebody who needed it. And he was paid like $400,000, dollars by these people in need of organs. And he was doing this for years. But he would give, like in the paper, I think it was saying like he's like the first person to like ever be convicted here in the United States of organ trafficking. He's not the first person to ever do it. He's just one who's being highly publicized and busted for. But most of these like middlemen, they'll pay these guys, the donors that they find in other countries who need the money. They'll give them like $1,000 to $3,000 maybe, a tad more, a tad less, really, for like your kidney, and depending on the country it's coming from. And then these guys, these body brokers, they're making 100 to 400,000, and they're taking it home. And like I was reading like the organ harvesting trade, it's like the second highest. And first, of course, is like, the illegal arms. And then it would be organ harvesting. And then, sex and drugs fall after. But it's always about the almighty dollar and greed. And it's just disgusting, the things that we discovered just in 2 weeks. Imagine if we were doing this way longer like everybody else is. We had longer than just 2 weeks to get this, to find what we could. It's just, there's so much more to, it's just gross what I was finding.
And these are sophisticated organizations. You have your boss, the guy that's in charge of everything. Then you have, it goes right on down to what they call the harvester. Or not the harvester, but the donor locator. And what he does, he's the one that goes out, finds the donor, more or less pressures them into it, or gives them a speech like, you're saving lives and the money will help you get out of debt and all this other stuff, And he gets a percentage, then it goes on and on and on higher up. But the guy at the top is the one taking home the money.
Well, sometimes they don't even tell you that. They're just telling you, you're doing this or we're going to kill you. So you have no choice. Or we're going to kill your family if you don't do this. But there's villages and villages of people they're known as the kidney village because almost everybody in there only has one kidney.
Yeah. And it's not just hospitals. There have been several funeral homes that have been busted for selling cadaver parts on the black market.
Oh, man, yeah. I found like tons of articles about that. It was actually shocking how many I found. Because it's basically happening all across the United States in these funeral homes.
Well, let's see if I can get the date right. On November 25th in 2005 in New York City, police exhumed a body in a cemetery in Queens. And they couldn't believe what they found. They said the lower half of that body was missing and the legs were replaced with plastic PVC pipe. And x-rays showed that it was not only the legs. Part of the arms were also missing and replaced with this plastic pipe. And the feet were attached to the pipe with screws.
And so nobody would know because they're in the body.
Nobody would know.
They're in that suits or whatever, so you don't you can't tell that they're missing body parts.
And during the viewing, in most cases, half the lid
it's shut on anyway.
The lid that goes over the legs, the lower part of the body, are shut anyway, so you're not going to see it. But anyway, this investigation led to the accusation of a biomedical company in New Jersey of illegally harvesting body parts from several funeral homes. Now, one of the funeral homes that was investigated, there were several, but this one they mentioned, the police found an upstairs room that was set up like a surgical suite. They found cut up cadavers, human hearts, harvested bones, as well as other organs and tissues. And all of them were taken without the permission of the deceased's families. And the permission forms, with the signature of the next of kin, kin,
Mm-hmm.
the signatures were found to be forged. And the investigation showed that this multi-millionaire dentist was behind the operation and the main broker. And they said that at the very least, 1,100 bodies had been illegally harvested.
Yeah, you were trying to say PVC pipe, right?
I did, yeah, whatever. I always get that messed up. But it was PVC pipe.
Yeah, they use that a lot, like in construction stuff.
Plumbing.
Well, not just plumbing, but also electrical stuff too. You know, they have to put the wiring through some of the piping and stuff too. But I read an article in 2006 where there was like seven, I think it was. Yeah, seven.
Yeah, 7.
Funeral home directors that pled guilty to selling corpses in New York and the Rochester area, and they were part of this huge enterprise that harvested bone and tissue from the cadavers, and then they would sell them to the, like you're talking about, the biomedical companies for like huge profits, unbeknownst to the families of the deceased ones.
Yeah, and one of the 7 funeral homes actually took parts from Alistair Cook.
Oh,
remember him? He was the host of Masterpiece Theater and sold them.
Yeah. There was evidence that the death certificates and the other paperwork were always falsified.
Oh yeah, according to his daughter, Alistair Cook's papers were changed, saying that one, he was 10 years younger, and that the cause of death was cardiac arrest, and he died of lung cancer. Yeah. And it had even spread to his bones.
Yeah. Yeah. But they don't care. That's how they make their money. They gotta falsify stuff. But in 2002, in Southern California, there was a funeral home director and owner who were being charged with 156 felonies for cutting up and selling cadaver parts to several different medical and pharmaceutical research companies, and also universities too. Can't forget those. But they were doing this without permission of the deceased family or friends. And it's stated in some of these articles, which we're all going to have all these in our references tonight after the show has been posted. But it's stated in some of these articles that in 1 year alone, they made around 400,000 or something like that. But just from selling the cadaver parts, more than they were from running the funeral home. And all the people who were they were supposed to be cremating them wholly and giving them to the family. Well, what this guy did, he ended up opening up, that biotech anatomical business or whatever, in order to sell illegally this human tissues and stuff to research facilities. So all these people who were thinking that their loved one was being created or cremated, they were being butchered and cut up in a back room with chainsaws and anything else, and then being sent off.
And when they collected their loved one's ashes, it turned out to be dried cement, which actually has the same consistency of a cremated body. But there was a funeral home in California that operated as a funeral home and a body broker company within the same building. The family even had a website set up where people could place orders online by way of email.
Yeah, isn't that jacked up, dude?
That's really jacked up.
They set up a website so you can go and pick what you needed. Anybody could practically order from this website.
Exactly, and they could select from this drop-down menu what they wanted, fill out a form, click add to cart, give a credit card number. That was it. It was stated in some articles that they would illegally harvest body parts and sell them without the consent of family members. Mm-hmm. Or at times, this funeral home actually offered a service where they would cremate part of the donor's body for a small fee, and for $300 extra, they would send the partial cremated remains to a loved one. That's kind of jacked up too. But it was said that oftentimes they would send, like I said, concrete powder instead of the person's ashes back, because they were selling the entire body, basically. You know, the people that got that cement, powdered cement, they didn't know the difference. And several of the employees that worked in the funeral.
That one in Colorado.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one in Colorado. I'm getting a little bit tongue-tied here. But several of the employees that worked in the funeral side, they stated that the woman that ran the place bragged about extracting the gold teeth from the bodies and selling them and using the money to take her family on vacations and such. And there was another person who worked with the funeral home who stated one time the owner bragged about how she made $40,000, you know, in 1 month just from selling donated cadaver parts.
Well, she said donated, but I'm sure it was...
She said donated, but I am pretty sure that they were not exactly donated.
Yeah, but she was just saying that, you know, but she was bragging about how much she was making from, you know, and see, that's kind of like, this was, I think, the first one that they kind of knew about where they actually had both businesses in the same building. And,
yep.
You know, that can kind, when you're into this and then you're running a body broker business, basically, and you're also the funeral home, it kind of might lure you into possibly stepping over that line, you know. But I saw that that article you were talking about too, because I was reading it and I was like, what the frick, you know. But you know, I was thinking she was selling like body parts anywhere from $200 up to $2,000 depending on what part, and that they also actually didn't maintain records for the services and such for like over 7 years to try to cover up their illegal actions, you know. So and there's a whole lot to this stuff, and we're going to have those links and references. You can read more because it's pretty messed up what they were doing. But I read an article that happened like in 2004 where the UCLA in California, the university, the director and another guy were arrested for selling body parts to companies illegally, you know.
And that's UCLA.
Yeah. And I mean, that article, you gotta read that one. But in 2015 in Chicago, I don't know why I had a weird accent there. In the Rosemont area, there's the Schiller Park Crematorium, and then there was also this Biological Resource Center labs. They were raided by the FBI for operating a body broker ring, and they found like 1,000 cadaver parts, like heads, torsos, legs, arms, all that stuff, from different individuals being sold on the black market. And many of these body parts were also discovered on ice in a warehouse in Detroit and in Phoenix attached to these people. And our establishments, or whatever you want to call this, I'm not really sure what you would label this type of avenue, this business. But they said that
rules.
Yeah, but they said many of these cadaver parts were tested for HIV. They had hepatitis and other infectious diseases, you know, which you're not supposed to be selling those. Now, some people online believe that, you know, the younger people are being killed in Chicago and that their bodies are being used for organ harvesting. That's why there's a lot of people that are going missing in Chicago, because there was a lot of body broker rings taking place in the city and outside of the city. But you know, there was a talk where there was this young woman who was found in a freezer in a hotel on the outskirts of Chicago in the Rosemont area, the same area where they had this operation, I guess, establishment, business, whatever you want to call it. And they believe that this young female, people are thinking this, I can't say for a fact, but they thought that she was possibly a victim of an organ trafficking ring, and that some people, the hotel or some of the employees who work in the hotel, may play a role in that operation, or, you know, get paid to help find people. And I mean, there's really no...
They would have to. You know, they find a body in a freezer in a hotel.
But there's no evidence.
Somebody had to know it was there.
Well, wait. Well, let me finish. But there's
Don't use that freezer. Ethel's in it. Somebody had to know.
Listen. Well, let me finish to tell...
Sorry. I'm sorry. I guess I'm getting worked up. I apologize.
Anyway, there's people who are, when they discovered the young woman who was in the hotel freezer or whatever, you know, they say like, oh, she was intoxicated and she probably found her way in there and then she died or whatever. But I mean, these are what they're trying to say. But there's people who are talking about they think that she may have been victim towards, because there's no evidence of sexual rape or anything like that. But there's no evidence proving that this hotel is a part of that or did that. But you know, like I said, there's a lot of people who are talking online that how there's a lot of missing young people in that area that are being used for organ harvesting. And like I said, I'm going to put the links in our references after the show tonight so you guys can read in depth these articles that Spooky and I saw online, because there's far more detail than what we're saying, because we're kind of like just shortening everything and trying to get through a lot of it to present to what the viewer wanted us to kind of talk about. But it's quite disturbing, to say the least, you know, the sheer numbers of them. And I read this article. It was in Nevada, okay? This was in 2015, that's what it is. In Nevada, there was these people living in this area, neighborhood, whatever, and there was a couple warehouse businesses, you know, facilities where people can use them, you know, for whatever. And they were complaining about, in the dumpsters and stuff, seeing bloody boxes, and how there was always this putrid smells. And they actually seen this guy in a parking lot outside one of these warehouses area, you know, wearing like some, what do you call it, medical type of cover-up stuff, you know, to protect you from what you're hosing down. But he was hosing down, they were processing cadaver parts outside in the parking lot. He was like hosing down.
Wow.
He was hosing down a frozen torso, you know, trying to get it unfrozen so that they could, you know, sell these, you know, distribute these parts around where they sell it. But he was hosing this down, and this is draining down into the gutters and into the streets and going down. And this warehouse was being used basically as a body broker, you know, or facility or whatever. But they would get all these bodies, and they were cutting them up with like chainsaws and everything else, and sometimes out there on the parking lot. And then they would package them up, and then they were selling them to medical research companies. I mean, talk about freaking gross and unhealthy for anyone living in that area. This is going down into your rivers. This is going down your street where you're walking barefoot. Who knows what these body parts, these infectious diseases and everything else. And this is happening everywhere, not just in Nevada. You know, it could be happening in like the storage rental units. Or they could be using it, you know, you don't know these facilities. They use whatever facility they can. And they're not going to be following the health standards, because this is the black market. And they're making far more money off of, you know, people than having a regular job and not selling drugs. They're making more money off of, you know, killing people and kidnapping people. And, you know, it's easy to do that, especially when you got teens and young people and homeless people and druggies or whatever. Like, you say, oh, here, come with me. I'll give you $100. We'll go do drugs together. Or let's party. And then they take you and you're dead, or they have you locked up in a warehouse and using you for a while as a living donor, you know?
Well, and the people who donate their bodies to science, okay, you don't know where your body's ending up. This is like...
Well, even funeral homes.
And even funeral homes. You know, when you donate your body to science, sometimes they have a viewing at the funeral home, and then the body is shipped wherever, you know, research hospital or whatever, you know, usually the nearest one or whatever. And you don't know what they're doing with your body. You don't know how your body's going to end up. And this is like modern day grave robbing. Mm-hmm. The only difference between grave robbing back in the day and today is that they don't have to go out now and dig up the bodies. Mm-hmm. They just go to the funeral home, some body broker, some
or the person who runs the funeral home,
surgeon or whatever, and pay them money, and they get and people are trusting these funeral homes to do the right thing with the bodies of their loved ones. and it's not always happening.
Well, basically, like these body brokers, they'll partner up with funeral homes. And what they'll do is like they'll offer free cremation to that of low income individuals, people who can't afford to have a funeral or can't afford to pay for their loved one to be buried. And there's these pamphlets, right, that say, if you donate the part of the body for research, then what we'll do is we'll cremate part of the body, and for free. But like that one lady in Colorado, she was offering, if you donate part of the body, she'll do it for cheaper, for like $300, $200,
Yeah.
But whatever. But there's like this service will say, oh, hey, we'll offer you, free cremation if you allow us to, donate some part.
And some people do it because they cannot actually afford a funeral, but they don't know what's going on.
Right. But what they do is, I'm sorry, my throat's scratchy. But what they do is when you hear me going or whatever, it's like my throat's kind of closing up on me a little bit. It's dry in here. But what they do is they'll cremate part of the body, or they say they cremate part of the body. But what they end up doing is they sold like all this stuff off for, profit, for a large amount of money. And like you're saying, sometimes the family will just get a small amount of ashes of their loved one, or they're getting sand or cement mix. Because they can't tell
Right.
They're not going to know the difference, because it's
They
very,
don't.
very similar, because it's basically your ash, you're like charcoal, and the same bodies, these bodies and these parts, they basically, they're selling them, they're bought, they're sold, and they're leased. Okay, these people who donate their bodies, how do I say this? Okay, so you're donating your body you think you're doing something good. Well,
Right.
there's no law, but what they can do is like it goes to Establish A, and they're doing research on Joe's head and Margaret's arm and this guy's heart or whatever, and now they're done with it. So they sell it to Establish B, and it can keep going on like that. So basically your body can be bought and sold and leased time after time after time after time. And here you think your loved one, you don't know your loved one's basically being bounced from place to place to place. You think you got this little ash of them, and their heads and everything is just going from facility to facility to facility until it's no longer usable. And they're all making money off of this, time and time again, off of one person's head or arm or whatever.
And the body doesn't stay intact. You're right. They divide the body up. But there is no federal law, though, that prohibits the sale of cadavers or body parts for the use in research or education. And it isn't illegal for a funeral home to sell items recovered from dead bodies like gold teeth. It's just unethical. But, funeral homes that also operates as a body broker could be financial. How do I want to say this? Could be financially lured to sell a body for a profit. And since there really are no laws in this area, almost anyone could become a body broker. I mean, there are, however, regulated laws when it comes to selling organs and tissues for transplant. Anyone who is selling human tissue has to have an okay by the federal government and operate as a charity. It's illegal to buy or sell body organs outside of that. And actually, it's not illegal to donate organs or tissues and stuff, but it is illegal when you pay the donor to do it.
Yeah, some selling and buying type of thing. It's only okay for the hospital to legally murder you. It's not okay, and it's only okay for the hospital to, in their terms, legally take a part out because they claim it was bad and it ended up not really being bad. But, the thing is that I think if you decide to, okay, you know what? I was actually, remember reading online where somebody got arrested for trying to sell one of their kidneys on Craigslist. So there are people who think that, like I said before, that laws should be changed to allow people to sell and purchase human organs, kidneys, especially since the human body has two of them, and can, function and get by with just one. But the HWO organization, they think that passing a law like this will only bring forth a darker element, and people will be exploited, and your human rights are going to be violated, especially those who are living in lower income or impoverished states. And the medical, or what you call it, transplant tourism, they think that should be banned in order to protect people. And it's true. I'm glad there's organizations like this, are people who are saying, they're standing up for people, saying like, no, we can't allow this to happen. Because if you look in China and other countries, we can't allow that to happen here. It's just wrong. And and then people are trying to help stop that that's over there. But, somebody had said something. Oh, they were talking about body farms. We have body farms here in the U.S., but yeah, they have body farms where people have their bodies get donated, and in a body farm, they put them in different, like it's one in Tennessee is outside, right? It's up on this mountainside, and I ended up staying, below at one time in a house when I was visiting, and somebody's like, oh,
I've been there.
Anyway, somebody said up there that that's the body farm, and I don't know how you could be in there because you would have to have the right credentials. But anyway, the bodies are placed in different situations, like half buried or in a car or in a certain things, so that they can it helps them solve like crimes and determine to see how body decomposition is, to help them solve certain things or understand things. And that, I guess, that's kind of different, because I don't think that that's kind of like a illegal type of thing that they're pushing for.
That is donating your body to science.
Right, and that's a little different.
And I was there when I was studying forensic science. But anyway, they put them in different situations to determine the rate of decomposition. Anyway. And it actually helps with solving. Oh, what's the word I want? I can't think of the word I want. But it helps when investigating deaths.
Yeah, I basically just said that. But there's also people who are talking about how, like, what's the big deal about selling your organ and stuff, but it'll lead to a lot of things where instead of people being kidnapped and stuff, they're just going to start imprisoning you and using you like they are in China or whatever. But I just want to say thanks to the viewer. Oh, somebody said it's an FBI raid recently here in New Jersey warehouse where broken body parts was with a group of doctors in India kidnapping and selling stolen organs and stuff. Right. We just want to thank the person who sent us this request. Like I said, me and Spooky weren't experts. This is like a 2-week research for us to try to get out what we did get out. But don't just go off of what we say, but start looking into this yourself, and maybe more of us standing up and talking about this, maybe it'll start making hospitals more responsible and not just pushing to say, oh, someone's brain dead when they're really not, because it's all about money, 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 you know what I mean? But Spooky, why don't you tell people what we're going to do next?
Well, we don't really have a topic yet. Join us Tuesday, September 4th, 2018 at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to discuss another viewer's request, but we're still debating on which one. I want to thank our mods, Nail, Native Earth Lady, Ghost Call Radio, and Doppel.
Well, we were talking about maybe a follow-up that goes to this, where there are people who ended up having a transplant, and when they had the transplant, they ended up having a personality change, because we read tons of cases where when they took on the donor's habits and personalities, like they'd start smoking, they were never a smoker before or whatever. And then we were also talking about maybe people who wake up from comas claiming to be another person, kind of like a spirit exchange incident or a walk-ins, But like Spooky said, we don't quite know what we're going to pick yet.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and please subscribe to us and give us a like and share us on with others on any social media you may be a part of.
Yeah, thanks guys for coming. And if you want to get show reminders, you can click here on our YouTube on the Spooky Raven name, and you can subscribe to us, or you can go to our Facebook page and like and follow to see our upcoming show topics. And if you want, you can contact us if you want to suggest a show topic idea, or even if you want to share with us your personal encounters on like a paranormal talk night. Our email address is anythingbutordinary@live.com. And we hope you guys all have a great week, and we'll see you around the internet. Good night.